at that time, I was early on in college, and I really was interested in health. Became a fitness trainer at that time, and when I was in college, I think that was where my interest in health really bloomed, and fitness, and that kind of opened up the doors to nutrition. And well, what are you supposed to eat? Before that, I was doing the typical horrible sad diet, and I had some extra weight on me too. And so I was looking more for something to like slim down. And then I found this whole world of veganism. And I didn't realize what it was at the time, but the proponents of it would say, oh yes, you drink all these, green juices and eat all these vegetables and you'll lose weight and feel great. And it's great for the environment and all that stuff.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Happy Monday. We've got a special guest today. We got Nicole Carter in today. And Nicole, give me a minute. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Let me do that for you. Okay, so you should be able to unmute yourself.
There we go. How's that?
Hey, it's good. How are you? Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'm doing great, thank you. We're finally back to some sunshine here in Orange County.
Yeah, it's actually going to be 92 today where I'm at up here in Washington State, which is pretty hot for where we're at. And so, just so you guys know, Nicole, we met several years ago when I was local to that area, and I was there visiting. I guess last week, and we ran each other on the beach. So it was kind of cool, early morning out there on beautiful Laguna Beach, and so that was fun to see you again and meet your significant other and some of the other. You saw somebody walking on the beach. You're trying to tell them about ulcerative colitis, and it was kind of a funny fortuitous sort of happenstance. Do you? Well, let me just give you an opportunity just to kind of share your story a little bit. Tell us your background a little bit, because I'm sure most people are not familiar with it, or at least may not be.
Yeah. Well, I am a health coach of about 20 years, and I also work in population health management. So my graduate work is in public health. And so I work on I work for a very large healthcare company in California. And I work on more of a large scale level with businesses that provide wellness programs for their employees. And so I develop programs for them. But it's a whole different scale than what I do as a health coach. So that's my professional work. And then my, in my personal journey, the way that I found you ready for that?
Sure. Well, sure. Yeah.
So I actually, I came to find you from years of searching on a way to heal ulcerative colitis. And when I was about 19, I became a vegan and did that for many years. And that was actually part of my health coaching journey. Believe it or not, I still have the videos up on my YouTube channel. Go back and look at all the things that I used to do. But yeah, that's the way that I kind of came into this was actually through years of being a vegan, which made me very sick. And I've had a lot of people talk about that. And there's so much more to say about that, but it's making the long story short for now. I went through about 7 years of ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed in 2012 and then just could not really find a resolution. I tried many different diets, and finally I came across you, and I was watching the Meat Heals website. I think it was meatheals.com. And I finally saw somebody that actually had a similar digestive disease. So I was like, well, this is great. People are losing weight, they're having different things, but not my illness that I had. And then I saw someone that did have it. And so I dove in and tried it. And that was how we met. And that was in 2018.
Yeah, it's probably maybe Adam Viskovich. I think it's one of the early ones I'd interviewed with ulcerative colitis. And he was an Australian guy at similar situation, had done the vegan diet, and it's kind of interesting, And I mean, you can't fault people for trying to do what they think is healthy, and a lot of people do believe that a vegan diet is healthy, and there are people that certainly lose weight and improve some health conditions, particularly if they're coming from like a standard American complete garbage diet. It's pretty easy to do that. What, at 19, a lot of, we think about what we know at 19 or 15 and then what we know now, we're like, we we're like, we would have never made those decisions back then had we know what we know now. What compelled you to go down the path of veganism at that young age?
Yeah, at that time, I was early on in college, and um, I really was interested in health. I became a fitness trainer at that time, and when I was in college, I think that was where my interest in health really bloomed, and fitness, and that kind of opened up the doors to nutrition. And well, what are you supposed to eat? Before that, I was doing the typical horrible sad diet, and I had some extra weight on me too. And so I was looking more for something to like slim down. And then I found this whole world of veganism. And I didn't realize what it was at the time, but the proponents of it would say, oh yes, you drink all these, green juices and eat all these vegetables and you'll lose weight and feel great. And it's great for the environment and all that. So I was trying it out. And at the time I was a distance runner. I ran marathons and different, long distance stuff. And it was a lot of carbs. So I think I was probably burning them up. So I did lose some weight, more just to get rid of the junk. I think I went to Vegas, for college, UNLV. So we did the all night, party and breakfast in the morning, and that did not do me any favors. So switching over to the vegan diet, at first I felt good. At first it helped me. And then I was starting to study more about it and wanted to learn more. I read, I think it's Colin, I forget his last name, the China study, which people love to still quote.
T. Colin Campbell. Yeah. That's who wrote
Thank
that.
you. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that blew me away, and I really, really bought into it. And then I started into the whole rabbit hole of veganism, which anybody that has come from that lifestyle knows that it's that fairly intense, and as far as like what they're teaching, and they cite everything with supposed research. And so I was a big believer that what I was doing was not only the best for my health, but also for the environment, for animals. And I think the environmental piece was really a huge driving factor for me.
How did the ulcerative colitis evolve for you? I mean, when did you start noticing things? How long did it take you to get diagnosed? And how did that go?
Yeah, I had stomach problems for years. I had no idea what was going on. I just felt bloated, and my stomach hurt all the time from as far back as I can remember. I think, from when I started the vegan diet, I seem to remember feeling fine. And then after maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I started having a lot of bloating, gas, constipation. I mean, everything stomach related. And it just stuck with me, and I could never imagine that it was anything with the food. So I did have a, kind of a succession of health problems. I had lost my gallbladder, and I was thin. I was a runner, and I was very thin. I wasn't the typical, profile for losing your gallbladder. But yeah, I did a raw vegan diet for a year because I was having health problems with my thyroid and different things, and getting sick often. I was getting like a flu, repeatedly. And I even got, pancreatitis because I had gall like sludge, and I didn't drink at the time. And I was like, I have no idea what's wrong with me. They didn't know. So just multiple problems. And so I tried the raw vegan diet because, if I wasn't doing it good enough as a vegan, I got to do it harder. So I went raw vegan for a year, and problems escalated. I kind of started getting into like depression and anxiety. And so really ultimately, I got to a point where I think the health problems just got to be so much. And it was mostly concentrated in my stomach is where I felt it, but it was everywhere. It was spreading really throughout my body. And I had a chiropractor that I was seeing, and he said, you really need to eat some protein. And I just felt like, no, I was so brainwashed into this veganism that I just could not allow myself to do that. And so the problems continued. And then when I was in 2013, I was prepping for a photo shoot. I was doing some modeling at that time, and I was, I guess, cutting more weight. And so I was doing nothing but like blenders full of smoothies with kale and mangoes and all that crazy stuff. And then I had a major stressor. My dad passed away, and life just got really stressful, which I think is often a trigger to make things a lot worse for people. And I started having blood in the stool and really a lot of pain in the stomach. And things just escalated. And so I went in and saw my doctor and was immediately diagnosed in a colonoscopy with colitis.
And how did they treat that? Was it steroids and some mesalamine or some biologics, or what was it? How did that work for you as far as treatment went?
They offered biologic and mesalamine, and I didn't really want to take anything. I was very resistant to drugs. And he just said, hey, look, there is no cure. It does not matter what you eat. You just take the drugs, and we'll try not to, have you lose your colon. And that's kind of the prognosis for many people with that. He felt that I had it a long time, were his words. And I think he's probably right. It just didn't get to that level. But that's what they prescribed. And that's what I did for 7 years. I just did the mesalamine. I took a drug called Lialda for a while, but it's extremely expensive. And I lost my insurance for a while, so I couldn't even get that. And it came with a lot of side effects that were kind of similar to colitis anyway. So I kind of stopped taking that and didn't really notice a difference. And then I used the mesalamine only when I would have like more of a flare. If I really needed it, I would go back to it. But you go into phases, I think, in colitis where things get a little bit better, and then they get worse, and they get better and worse, and you're just up and down for many people years. And that's what it was for me. For a solid 7 years, it was almost daily blood in the stool. And, some days would get you in bed with pain, and some days you could function. Just never know.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me, particularly these gastroenterologists will say that food has nothing to do with a primary gastrointestinal disease, which it just seems like should be so obvious that it does, and clearly it does in my view, at least, and probably in yours now as well. So while this is going on, are you still working in the public health space as a relatively sick person? And how did you sort of navigate that?
Yeah, at that time I was teaching classes and doing some health educator work. So my role up until about 6 years ago was as a health educator. And of course, you teach people about food and nutrition and exercise and the typical risks. But, I have a whole new perspective in the last couple of years about that. And really, it comes down to, in public health, we're often taught, a lot of people in public health, and I won't speak for everyone, but a lot of people that come from that line of training are taught that diseases are, what their diseases are coming from. That's called epidemiology, as you know, and that it's mostly related to stress, and nutrition and lack of exercise. But they don't tell you what about the nutrition. Like, they don't really say a whole lot about that. So I did a lot of my own research, and currently, even now, and for the last 20 years, they're really pushing more fiber, that you need to eat 25 grams of fiber or more per day and cut back on red meat. And as you know now, it's even gotten tighter where they're even more pushing the plant-based agenda, even in public health. It's still today.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very acutely aware of that now, and we'll get into this a little bit, because I know you've changed your perspective on not just diet, but a whole bunch of different things when it comes to managing health, stress, and exercise, and all those things. And we'll get into those. But so now you're 7 years into this, and how did you make the leap from I'm saving the animals and the environment and eating vegetables is the best thing in the world to now I'm going to eat meat? Or how did that transition work? Or what prompted you to do that?
Yeah. So I had tried going into like a macrobiotic. I had tried the specific carbohydrate diet. There's multiple out there that I did try. So I had to dabble a little bit with some of the proteins. And the first ones I did were eggs, and I tried some fish. I think chicken had disgusted me forever. I couldn't touch it. And I didn't really get much results, but I started to kind of recognize that I did feel a little bit better when I was having more protein. And then I was just constantly researching, every diet I had tried it. And I just searched for something. And when I did do the ketogenic diet, and occasionally I would feel a little bit better, but it would always come back, and I couldn't figure out what is it that's triggering me. And so through that keto world, I did that for a little while, and I was, I felt okay, but I continued to have the symptoms. And so I felt like I was onto something there, and something in the keto space. And it might've been your video first that came up, but in that whole world, there's a lot linked together. And, a video came up talking about eating only meat. And I think it was yours that I saw first. And then after kind of binge watching on, what is this? This is crazy. I just couldn't even conceptualize that you could be healthy without the plants and all that. I heard Amber O'Hearn talking, and Amber, because of her using an all meat diet to cure her mental health, I knew there was a strong connection between the gut and the mental health. And so if I just figured if she could cure the mental health, then she's fixing her gut. And that's what I needed to do. So that was my big push. So in 2018, I jumped in, and I just, I did not have a good feeling about the animals and plant-based, and I just didn't know, but I knew that what I was doing wasn't working, and I had done everything else. And so I went for it. And along the way, I learned so much that it really changed my perspective on, there is no, I always say to people now that are still in this mindset of, I can't eat animals, I can't kill animals. Well, no matter what you eat, something is going to die. And I grew up on a farm, and I witnessed this in Michigan, that even if you were to eat a plant-based diet, animals of all kinds die. You disrupt habitat, all the things that I know you guys have probably talked about many times, but it took a lot for me to recognize that and hear it from enough people to crack that shell and really open up my mind to the fact that, we're not saving the environment. We're not saving the animals by eating a vegan diet. We're just killing ourselves.
Yeah, a lot of people come to the realization of that, and clearly there's, no matter what we do as humans, no matter what we eat, there's going to be, a whole bunch of animals that end up dying, unfortunately, for that, and that's just the way it is. Can we continue to improve? Sure, and we do. So how long did it take you? I mean, when you started to go into this all meat diet, how did, you said you started with eggs. How did you do that? And then how long did it start to take you before you started to notice how something is finally getting better here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I went from eating like fish and salads and things that I grew in my garden, to when I went straight into the carnivore diet. I did do fish and chicken, which now I think is really backwards, but I did feel better. I eliminated the plant foods, and that is what finally made the difference. And I did see improvement in just a matter of days. But I was kind of falling off, and I was fumbling a lot. And so I'd say probably the first month, I didn't really do it very well. And then as I learned more and listened and kind of got a little more seasoned about, I started eating bacon and steak and hamburgers. It took me a month to warm up to that beef was okay, and that I actually felt great eating it. So I continued that, and within 4 months, and there is a progression there, like every day, every week, it would be a little better. Something would improve. But by 4 months in, my symptoms had finally stopped. And I was actually in Mexico at the time, and we'd surf all day and eat steaks at night. And I actually felt the best that I ever had. I probably looked the best I ever had. And I like cried. I just couldn't believe that the symptoms had finally stopped after 7 years of hell. That it was hard to believe that this could be possible. So I'm going to say it took me 4 months to really see zero symptoms. And from that time, I have not had any symptoms come back. I have never had since that time. 4 months into carnivore, I hadn't had any symptoms of anything, like nothing, and never came back.
How long ago was that since you've been symptom free now?
So that was, that was July of 2018.
4 years. Yeah.
4.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we are 4 years, right about
4 years
now.
in.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah.
amazing. And just for the record, as I know, you've been able to reintroduce some other foods in your diet now. You've
Mm-hmm.
healed everything and have now got a little bit more of a little bit more less restrictive diet, which is wonderful. I think it's great that you're able to do that. Did you ever by chance go back to the GI doc once you got healed and said, hey, look, dude, like what you told me where I was going to suffer for this rest of my life is not the case anymore?
Yeah, I did go back to one doctor and he just said, you know, I don't have an explanation. And he just said, you know, we did not do another colonoscopy. I didn't want to. I'm a little against too many invasive procedures. Um, I actually was going to do one and I had so much trouble with the medicine and it just didn't work out. But he was like, hey, you know what? Whatever you're doing seems to be working. You're feeling good. So, you know, what can I say? So they are fairly stumped because they will tell you that there is no cure. And many people, I think, will still say that. Many people that are still suffering with the illness because there isn't a cure when you go that route. Like you go that route of just taking drugs to try to suppress it forever and keep eating the things that are making your gut inflamed, then no, there probably will never be a cure for you because you're not addressing the nutrition piece, which I think is probably like 95% of it. You know, I do think there's other stuff in there like stress and things that can bother people, but for the most part, it is nutrition. And it blows me away because I did a lot of research to write about it, and I put a little book together, an ebook. It's on Amazon, but to tell people all the research that I found along the way. And one of the things was that even a gastrointestinal specialist only gets about 4 hours of nutrition in medical school. And unless they go do some other training outside of that, they don't have any. That's it.
Yeah, that is amazing because food does have such a huge, it plays a huge role in the pathophysiology of so many diseases, and we don't really even understand much of it all, much less consider using it as a treatment option, which is kind of a sad commentary on the modern medical system. But so, you know, you get 4 months in, you're doing this, you're still working. I mean, you know, within the public health sector, and the message is still the same thing. Eat more fruits and vegetables, don't eat saturated fat, red meat is a devil, cut back on your salt. How do you sort of reconcile that, knowing what you know now and saying, hey, maybe this isn't the right advice? How does that work for you in your day-to-day job, not your coaching?
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's really hard. I struggle with it, honestly. My job is, you know, I love to help people, and I don't really feel like working in mainstream medicine is helpful anymore because we're not teaching people how to take care of themselves. We're teaching people to follow a doctrine that's been handed down from the medical system through schools. And I think that we're really just doing such a disservice to people. So luckily I don't teach nutrition in public health. I'm more on the business sector. And so I don't have to cover those kind of things for people.
Okay. You were talking about how you reconcile work with your newfound knowledge of, you know, sort of health.
So what I was saying is that I have learned that the medical system is just really broken. We don't have the goal isn't really prevention, and we're not teaching people how to eat. You know, we're not doing those kind of things. So in my work, I'll call it my 9-to-5 job. I kind of have to do that job right now, and it's sad. It's frustrating because luckily I don't have to teach people about nutrition in that role. I teach businesses how to use wellness programs to, you know, make a better business, but it still comes through with they expect the traditional mainstream medical approach to wellness, which, as you and I know, is not wellness. You know, they promote plant-based diet. They talk about exercise, which is probably great. And they talk about stress, which is great. But their form of prevention is screenings, vaccinations and screenings. And to me, that's not wellness. That's not, you know, that's not, maybe tertiary. I don't know, but it's not even really a part of preventative care in my mind. So it's a real personal struggle with me, Shawn, actually daily, that I have to kind of stick with this. And someday I hope to retire that and just full-time do my coaching work, because I just like the guy that you saw me with on the beach. I can help people that I can give my personal, opinions and experience to, but I can't help people when I'm forced to share the traditional mainstream medical verbiage. I don't think it really helps people too much. So unfortunately, that's the predicament a lot of us are in that work in the medical field, that have other experiences and know something that's outside of the norm of medical advice. So that's a hard one. That's a really hard question. I mean, it's just a hard position to be in, knowing otherwise. It's very cognitive dissonance,
Yeah, I get that. Like I said, I went through that myself personally. I got
Yeah.
to a point where I was like, I don't know that I'm doing the right thing as a physician. I need to change things, and it was a tough time. It was cost me a lot of money, cost me a lot of things. And hopefully, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, I'm much happier, and I think I did the right thing. So like you said, so you've not had symptoms in 4 years. The ulcerative colitis is effectively in remission or gone or cured or
Mm-hmm.
whatever terminology you want to use. And how did the decision? I mean, did you because and I would say, in all honesty, probably about 90% of the people that do a carnivore diet and see good resolution eventually go back and start adding a few things, which I think is completely
Mm-hmm.
fine. By the way, I've never told people not to do that. Now, there's some people that just prefer not to, and they do better, and they do great, and don't
Yeah.
tolerate conditions. But did you have some hesitation when you were like, what was the decision to say, I just can't do a strict carnivorous diet for forever? And was there a point where, how did that decision making process go that I'm going to add some stuff? And were you noticing things were missing from you? Were you having problems? Was it just, and did you have any concern? Like, were you worried it's going to reset your ulcerative colitis off?
Yeah, two things. So in 2019, December of 2019, I had a appendicitis out of nowhere, and I think it might be related to that. But I did have some problems afterward, and I think it was like I checked my thyroid, I checked my hormones. My thyroid was a little low, and so for that reason, I thought, okay, let me see if I need to add some carbohydrates to it. So I tried adding fruit. It did help my sleep. I was having a lot of really bad insomnia. But the benefits wore off quickly. I still don't really have a good understanding of why that changed. But yes, if I ate, and I still don't recommend, like, most of my clients are people with inflammatory bowel disease of some sort. And I will say you are 100% correct that the reason why they don't get to that full healing point is because they introduce foods too soon or the wrong foods. And I think nobody has to add that foods to be healthy. I don't think, I definitely don't believe we need vegetables to be healthy. For people that are super active, like if I'm surfing a lot in Mexico, I do get a little tired and it's hot. And so I might eat, a banana or something to hold the water and all of that. But I don't think most people really need them to be healthy. For me, it was because I live in Southern California and I love the the fresh, fruit. I missed it. I craved it like crazy. And I don't eat vegetables much either. I do eat avocados and occasionally like an artichoke or something like that. But I still eat predominantly meat. I don't add other foods for any other reason than just for fun or to be able to, go out to some place. So I'd say I still eat 99% meat, but it was more just, to try to have some interesting variety. I craved the fruit, and then I will say that you may gain weight if you start adding a bunch of carbs, and you may have a flare up if you add the wrong kind of foods. I didn't have any of that problem, so that's why I use the word cure, because I feel like I can eat most foods. There are things that I'll never touch, like raw vegetables, legumes, grains, wheat, processed foods. No, I never will eat that. But occasionally, like some berries or something, or an avocado, sure. And I like being able to tolerate that. And it feels really good after being so sick for so long. But I do caution people against adding too much back. And that's usually when I see people slip back and have problems, is just, adding foods back. And it can be like, junk food. I've had people that just try a little tiny bowl of Cheerios and boom, it just lights them up. But I've also seen people that will add what they think is really healthy, like a half of a sweet potato. And again, boom, it lights them up. So it doesn't necessarily have to be anything junk food that we think of. I think it's just most of those foods and vegetables of all kinds, for the most part, can really irritate the gut. And that's what I would stay away from. So for me, I've been able to add in small amounts of foods here and there. And if I feel any sense of bloating or discomfort, that's to me a sign that, just don't want to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the fact that you would say that vegetables don't do well for you would make you an absolute heretic, because we all know that vegetables are God created those to make us super healthy, and if we don't eat vegetables, we're going to die immediately or something, or we can't be healthy without them. Which is obviously, I'm being facetious about that. And I've seen some of your social media. I know even I guess you said you had to restart your account or something or another. But there's there was a point where you were talking about, I know you talk a lot about stress, and you talk a lot about this compulsion, as a young female at some point, just pressured to be always exercising and stressed out, and now you've got a more relaxed.
Yeah. I think you froze up there for a second. Oops.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you are.
Yeah, so I was just saying, just with regards to exercise and stress, and instead of hyper exercising and just always worrying about being a certain look, you've changed your attitude on that a little bit. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, from a pretty young age, I think that I had felt that societal pressure to be really fit, and I probably what drove me to all the exercising and running and restricting in the diets and the veganism. I really think that there was a piece of that there, and I think it's really common for a lot of women, not just women, but for a lot of people, but specifically for women, because there is this aesthetic look that a lot of people want to have. So I worked my butt off to try to get that, and I liked the journey. I enjoyed working out and all that too, but I used to work out so extremely hard that I think it was really stressful on my body, and I was teaching too. So couple workouts a day, 2 hours of somewhat cardio hit like stuff, and not much strength training. So if you were to look back at my, you could probably find it somewhere in my book or in my Instagram, but I have some pictures of me from years ago where I was doing that, and I was very thin. But I didn't have much muscle on me. And I think it was really stressful on my body. And the amazing thing was when, and I think there's a photo of me in your book, and it's probably where I look the best I have in many years of my life. And I'm in my 40s, I'm 47. And I compare that back to, back when I was, in my 30s, and I looked way better. I was just doing strength training, only teaching like one class a week, and, resurrected my gut health with the diet and eating only meat. And I didn't have to work out that hard. And I think that's the big bonus about this, is that people, women especially, it's nice to look good and be lean and strong. But formerly, what I think I did was just beat myself up for it with way too much strenuous cardio. It really took a toll on my joints. I got arthritis in the hips and everything from it. But I don't think it's necessary if we eat the proper diet. We don't need to work that hard. But I did shift gears away from that because it's just very toxic for women. It's just, I think I see a lot of women that have lots and lots of cosmetic surgery here in, Orange County. They call it the Orange County woman. And no disrespect to women that want to look their best, but I just feel it's more of a societal pressure. And I don't like that. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to feel like it's not okay just to be normal and to age. And, maybe I got a little bit of belly fat or whatever. I don't think you'll have much if you eat correctly and you keep your body moving. But I don't like the idea that comes from the fitness world, of being so hard on ourselves and having to meet a certain ideal. I think it really breeds dysmorphic behavior and body dysmorphia and, obsessive behaviors.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I am, obviously I've got some obsessive tendencies around competition, and I'm trying to break world records and all this stuff and compete. And I've done that since I can't even remember, since I've been young, since I've been a little kid, quite honestly. As an 8-year-old kid, I was thinking about this stuff. And so I think that'll always be part of my weird personality, I suppose. But, it's interesting when you look at, like, from an exercise standpoint, what is correlated with the best overall outcome, longevity across the world, what single exercise? It's just walking. I mean, people that walk on a regular basis tend to have better outcomes. And, you live by the beach. And when I was there, literally every morning, right after sunrise and every night for sunset, at a minimum, I was walking up and down the beach a couple miles. And we were staying in a little cottage about a half mile off, up there near the high school. And that area is. And that to me is so incredibly rewarding, just I think that everybody should be doing that part. And then anything beyond that, if you have goals of being an athlete and competing, you've got to do the training for that. But I think it's just and so, I mean, what does your day-to-day routine look like now? I mean, I saw you cruising around on the beach, I'm sure that's part of it. You'd be crazy not to, living where you do. And then,
right.
I mean, what are you eating on a daily basis? Are you still crushing some steaks, or, I mean, how much does meat make up percentage-wise of your diet, and what's your routine look like?
Yeah, I would say definitely probably 95%. I will typically get up every day. I have a glass of tea. I drink green tea. I don't do the coffee anymore. It just was too much for me. And then I go out for a walk. I walk the dog, and we usually walk for about an hour, and then come home and get started on some work. And then around lunchtime, I'll go out for another walk just by myself on the beach. And usually another maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then I'll do some weight training. I have kind of a big yard that I just do some calisthenics, and I have a TRX and kettlebells and just random stuff. Some days I'll do Pilates. Always some kind of strength training, probably 3 to 5 days a week. And then I often go out for a surf, or if I have a chance, a couple days a week, go surfing, or another walk in the evening. But I just try to stay as active as I can. And as far as eating, sometimes I'll eat breakfast around 10. My first meal is usually around 10, and it's either eggs and bacon or ground beef. They'll sit with me the best and carry me a long time. Then I usually, if I have lunch, it'll maybe be just a snack, sometimes it'll be like a cold hamburger, or let's see, yesterday I didn't eat lunch. I just had a big breakfast. But yeah, something more, meat of some sort. And sometimes I'll eat smoked oysters. Occasionally I'll have like a raw carrot, and that's the extent of my vegetable world. And then for dinner, I usually have a steak or fish or hamburgers, whatever kind of meat I have, I buy it in bulk. And my dessert is some raw sheep's milk, which I love. So good. And that's my day. I don't really feel like I'm missing anything. If I want to have some berries or something, I will. But I cut back on the fruit. I was going crazy with it because I think it's kind of addicting, actually, just so sweet, and it's really good. So I kind of cut back on that. Just felt like I was getting a little too much. And so mostly meat, a little bit, maybe a carrot now and then, or if we just got some artichokes from the market. That's pretty rare. They're never that good. So once a month or something, we'll have some artichokes.
Yeah, and forgive me, I forgot your significant other's name. I know him as Sunglasses Jesus.
Sunglass Jesus.
Sunglass Jesus. I can't remember what his real first name was. Is he similar diet as you now, or what does he do?
Yeah. So Todd is, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you it's a good story about him too. So he has followed my diet with me, and he's awesome, super supportive. And so he did the carnivore diet as well. And I'll tell you, he's never been a weightlifting guy. He's never been not real muscular. He's a surfer. And so he's in good shape, but he's never had much muscle on him. And after, I think the same amount of time, 2-3 months on the diet, he had some of his friends stopping him and saying, "Dude, what are you doing? You're like jacked." And he wasn't really doing that much. He does a little bit of weight training. It's just not really his thing. But he definitely put on a lot of muscle, and he's got also some chronic hip pain from years of surfing. He's been in the water for like 40 years. And so hips are a normal, I think you probably know this, I've probably seen it, but surfers tend to blow out their hips. I don't know why it's so common, but we know a lot of people that have. And he has a addiction to ice cream. He can eat steaks all day long but can't give up the ice cream. So I challenged him to carnivore for a week, and his hip pain went away in just 1 week from not eating the ice cream. So he's awesome, super supportive, loves the diet, and he grills a mean steak. So we get along pretty good.
That works. Yeah, that's nice. It's nice.
Yeah.
And I think it's an easy sell for a lot of males, because they're like, sign me up for steak. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's just sometimes convincing women who've been brainwashed into believing that meat is the enemy and the road to salvation is a tiny piece of chicken on some fat-free salad dressing. It's just,
oh God,
it's kind of crazy. So do you have people that like remember you from the vegan days because Orange County's not that big of an area. You probably run into the same people are walking up and down the beach. Has there been any sort of, hey, what are you doing, or are you crazy, or type of stuff that's sort of in your way?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of that. So over the years, I've been, like I said, been health coaching and teaching for 20 years. When I lived in Nevada, I was, doing some work for the university that I graduated from and taught health classes there. And I actually taught classes on plant-based diet and veganism and all the, I laugh at myself. I call it the hippie stuff that I used to teach. And I still have people that are on my emailing list from years ago that have just stuck with me over the years. And I still continue to send out emails. And I have had people that just comment like, wow, what an incredible transformation. Like the story, they know my whole story and they followed me for years. So it's pretty cool to see that. And most of them are really, really supportive. I don't really have people that I see in person that don't know what's up with me. They've seen my transition because they know me from social media. And so they've watched it and they have been great about it. I have people that will stop me in the store and go, you're healthy with Nicole, or here on the beach even. We do bump into people. And it's been such a long time since I've done any of that plant-based work, but so nobody has a hard time with it. And I think people that have tried this they know. You don't have to explain it. It's the trolls on YouTube. My Instagram account got hacked. So Healthy with Nicole is like dead. I can't even get to it. So now it's Healthy with Nicole 2.0 or something like that. And so I don't have near the number of trolls that I did when I was posting, everything that I was learning, I was posting it. And, I was blown away. And then my followers that were at the time still plant-based or even vegan were appalled, and they were, shouting at me through the text about how I was going to, kill the planet and kill the animals and how awful of me. But, honestly, I just didn't care. Like it never really got to me because you cannot argue with results, and I'm not going to torch my body just to live to some fake ideal of veganism or whatever. But, no, most people are really supportive. I will tell you at work, I only work remote now, since COVID. But before that, when I used to go to meetings, I was definitely the heathen of the workplace because, everybody there is eating plant-based. And I had a boss that actually would harass me at meetings and ask me if I had enough dead animals on the table and things like that. So it's not accepted in my workplace. So thank God I don't have to travel for work anymore. And I just work from home where I can cook my own food and eat what I want in peace.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to eat what we want in peace. That is, I think, all that anyone want. And there's some people that want to get into that. And that. So we have to kind of collectively stand up for our individual rights to eat how we want to eat. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you talk a little, stress, you'd mentioned at some point that stress has a role. It has a role in ulcerative colitis, like anything. Mm-hmm. In fact, heart disease, it has a huge role in, and sometimes we underestimate the impact that stress has on our overall health. Mm-hmm. Diet has a huge role, as obviously I'm going to be a proponent of, but there are other things out there. So how did you sort of come to the realization that stress was impactful? I mean, or the degree of impactfulness, and how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, a lot through experience and my course of study. So I had, we've received this training in school about stress as part of it's a major driver of disease and health factors. So I always knew it was a role there. But I think over time I've learned how severe it can be on your health. So for the ulcerative colitis, like I said, my gut was in really bad shape, I'd say, for the majority of the 19 or whatever years I was vegan. I think it was about 15 years actually. And I think majority of that time my stomach was already a mess. And I had stress, but not, not to the larger degree that I had later on. And so when I came down with the severe, the bleeding and the pain and the really apparent symptoms, I was, like I said, my dad had just died and I went through a divorce and my job, I lost my job. Like I had major life stressors and it was just like the tinder was there and the light, the flame just came on from the stress. So, what we know is that basically when we're in a stress state, our body's more inflamed, your cortisol levels are up and you're less resilient to stress and it does take an effect on us, especially if we're beating our bodies up with, excessive exercise, not eating properly. And quite honestly, looking back, I even think I've learned more about this from like going into the COVID period because of what we were just talking about with, my cognitive dissonance of my role at work and knowing what I now know and as well about the medical system and what happens there. That was extremely stressful for me. And, I think I thought that there was a cure that I needed in my diet. And that was where I was like, oh, I was in Mexico and I was eating fruit and sleeping. And I was like, okay, this is it. But that went away and the stress stayed. And so I think it really took a toll on, like I said, I think my thyroid was having problems, my hormones. I couldn't sleep. I was having panic attacks at night. And that I just couldn't figure out what that was. And so I think it came down to, it was just a whole lot of stress from, what we all went through with 2020 and 2021 were extremely stressful for me. And I think that's what really made a difference in my health. And so I'm getting out of that, phase a little bit more now. And my diet is important. I feel best where I'm at, eating what I just mentioned. But that is what I see for people. Most of the clients that I work with, I always ask them, whenever your health situation, and it doesn't have to be just colitis or gut stuff, but what happened right before this major health event? And aside from eating a crappy diet, there's usually a stressful event. And I have found that super common, that stress is a trigger. I think it just puts so much pressure on our body. Our inflammation rises and we just become more susceptible to it unless we know how to deal with it. And most people don't. Most people don't have those skills. And I didn't for a long time either, but I went through, I mentioned I was a trainer and a teacher. I taught bar and yoga for years. And a lot of that included some training on like meditation and breathing. And I learned a lot about the sympathetic nervous system, as opposed to the parasympathetic and how to rebalance that so that your body is more resilient. And it really does make a difference. I use that in part of my healing journey, along with the carnivore diet and a little bit of fasting and a little bit of meditation and just working on my stress levels. I think they were really, really helpful. And I've seen that help other people too. And yeah, someone on your chat says the exercise helps the stress. Absolutely. So, I think that we just need to address it. Diet will take you pretty darn far, but if you're still struggling with things, you might want to take a look at, what's your life like? Are you over exercising? Are you not sleeping? Do you have emotional stuff during the day? For me, I had to cut the caffeine out because it was making that stress level even worse. And, I think that's something we have to think about.
Let me ask you, as far as you'd mentioned when you were a vegan, you obviously had the gut issues, but you said you started to develop some depression and mental health issues. And anytime you're sick, being depressed, you think, well, there's a reason for me to be depressed because I got this awful illness that's ruining my quality of life. And I think it's more than that. I think there's also some physiology going on there, and the same thing that's damaging the gut probably has a downstream effect on our brain physiology. Have you noticed in general, outside of individual stress events, in general, would you say you're mentally, cognitively, emotionally better, worse compared to veganism? What were your thoughts?
Oh God, 100%. I think I didn't realize the mental health state I was in. I just never really realized it until I was on the other side. But shortly after becoming carnivore, I mean, it was less than when my symptoms were, it was when I still had symptoms. So it was probably one of the first things to improve. was my mood. Definitely had less depression and anxiety. And I will say, even now, if I dabble too much in even with the so-called healthy foods, I notice it. I notice it affects my mood, and so I stay away from it. And someone just said meat is brain food. It certainly is. I think it has a lot to do with the amino acids and the fact that we're not inflaming our gut, because we have the gut is considered the second brain, and it's where you have so many neurons that live in your brain or live in your gut, and we actually do respond here in our head to what's happening in our stomach, and we just don't even know it. So you'll see people, and I've had clients that have had major depression and switch to carnivore, and then have something like, I remember one girl that was eating liverwurst, I think it was, and just the pepper alone would send her into a depressive state. So I don't think that it takes that much. Most people that I've worked with have done awesome on just meat for mental health purposes. I even have had a few clients that have had eating disorders that have improved dramatically, which are connected oftentimes to anxiety and stress. So I've seen it, and yes, I've experienced it. And the cool thing is that if you go to a carnivore diet from a plant-based diet, or even just, a mixed diet, and you're eating too many plant foods, because I don't think it takes a whole lot. Like, you don't need to be vegan to be getting problems. But just eating salads and things that you can't digest very well can breed bacteria in your gut and cause inflammation. And that inflammation can show up in your mood because it's affecting your neurotransmitters. And then someone else mentioned the same thing, which is you need that fat and cholesterol for your hormones. So I think they all play together, and you can see a difference in a matter of days for people that are dealing with anxiety and depression. Absolutely. There's also the hormones for women, which can be crazy wacky, and I don't have all the answers for people there, but I will say that plant-based is not the answer, because you need all that saturated fat. You need that cholesterol. And it's been demonized, still is demonized today, even though it's, whole thing has been debunked. People are still put on statins over 200 cholesterol, and I think they're lowering it even. When we need all that cholesterol for our hormones, for our brain function, for so many things, it's actually very protective, the cholesterol levels. So, yeah, we need all that. And unfortunately, the diet that's being promoted, I think, puts us in a really, bad state of mind. And it can be changed really quickly, though. I've seen people shift in just a matter of days.
Yeah. That's one of the more common things. And because these days, mental health issues are so incredibly common. Depression, I think like 20% of the population is on an antidepressant, something like that. So it's so incredibly common. And these common things like weight loss or obesity, mental health issues, gut issues, joint issues are so common, and we see them commonly resolved by people going on or changing their diets, because it does have a role there. Nicole, we're running out of time. I'm going to go do some other consultations for my part of my day, but let people know where to find you, where to follow you, how to get in contact with you if they're interested in getting some advice from you.
Yeah. So you can go to my website, healthywithnicole.com. And then my Instagram is healthywithnicole new 2.0, or I think it's actually Healthy with Nicole 2.0. So you'll have to follow me over there, because the last one is defunct. Can't access it. And then, of course, my YouTube channel, where I've been doing a lot more interviews. Hope you'll come on there too and talk about Revero and everything you're doing there. But my YouTube channel is really focused a lot on gut health, and I'm doing some more interviews there now, and that's also Healthy with Nicole.
Yeah. I know we're in the process of scheduling for me to come chat with you. So thank you so much, Nicole, for doing this, and continue to advocate. Hopefully, I'm hoping one day, these wellness companies or whatever that you do, we'll actually have Revero in there dealing with these companies. That's our goal. And so we'll be doing that, and kind of,
that'd be great.
Giving a different paradigm of, not just managing disease and don't forget to take your pills on time type of thing, which a lot of these companies do. They're, it's kind of a lot of lip service on the lifestyle, and make sure you